Welcome to Minister's Toolbox, providing leaders with the tools they need to succeed in ministry. Now, here's your host, Casey Sabella.
I'm ancient enough to remember the television series Mission Impossible that first aired in 1966 when I was just 11 years old. The popular show ran for 7 years and created an indelible impression upon American audiences. The show began with a star who went by the name Jim Phelps, going about what seemed to be his daily affairs, when suddenly he would dart into an alley, pick up a small box behind a particular group of bricks on an old building, and bring it into his office, where the box, once opened, contained a small tape recorder. On it, a voice would inform him of a dangerous mission that required immediate attention or grave consequences would occur. At the end of the recording, the tape recorder would self-destruct after 5 seconds, and then he would choose a special team to carry out the mission. When Tom Cruise began producing Mission Impossible films many years later, most of this same concept opened each movie with better technology. Well, I'm not sharing this to bring you down memory lane, but to ask you as a church leader, what is your church mission? And does it matter at all to members of your church? I have some things to share today that I believe will help you to get more focused on what God has called you to accomplish. I'm a church planter by nature. I'm one of those weirdos who loves to think about starting new congregations from scratch. The church that I now pastor began with my wife and I, and one other couple. Right off the bat, we came up with a mission: to reach the people of Greater Waterbury with the good news about Jesus Christ, and then train them to become effective in life and ministry. That sounds pretty good, huh? Not really. Mission statements are supposed to communicate why your church exists. A mission, like the Tom Cruise movies, is that there is a problem in the world that needs a specialized team to solve. At the outset of each film, the leader of the team must get a clear understanding of the mission to address the crisis. What is your church's mission? Now, before you answer, does it matter at all to the people in your church? I'm pretty sure you think it does, but the reality is that most people couldn't recite your mission even if you bet them $20 they could. Think about that for a moment. If people in your church are unclear about their mission, it's also certain they are accomplishing nothing to move the mission of your church forward. If the members of the IMF force selected by Tom Cruise either forgot or could not recall what they were tasked to do, the mission itself would fall apart. Every mission that has any significance must be closely related to the Great Commission of Jesus. If the reason your church exists is to serve food to the homeless, that's a beautiful service, but does nothing to advance the kingdom of God by itself. The Great Commission is about reaching lost people and transforming them into disciples. If the purpose of your church is not aimed in that direction, it will ultimately fail or become something that does not resemble a legitimate church. If you look at many mainline churches, for example, that are declining, you'll see in their mission the reason why. Here's one example of one denomination. Quote, "United in spirit and inspired by God's grace, we welcome all, love all, and seek justice for all." Okay, what does that mean? I have no idea. How does it fulfill the Great Commission? I also have no idea. Here's another: to make known the love of Christ by word and deed within our churches, communities, and the world. That seems a little better, but it's really not a mission that calls anyone to action. How do you fulfill that mission right now? I'm not trying to rat out other churches, but if you're not really clear why your church exists and what it is created to accomplish, no one in the congregation is either. Let me go and pick on myself. I shared with you a moment ago what we selected as our original mission. I would recite that mission statement from time to time from the pulpit, and it sounded great. Our purpose was to reach the people of our city with the good news and then train them to be effective in life and ministry. Yay, team! Does it relate to the Great Commission? Yes. Is there a call to action? Kind of. The trouble was, no one, including my wife, could recite the mission from memory. Once again, if people in your church are not clear about who they are and why they exist, how will you measure whether you're successful? A mission statement is really a promise to do something in society. When Jesus said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel," that was a call to action. If people are not preaching the gospel, then they're not fulfilling Jesus' mission. In the same statement, he also charged them to train people to become disciples and be baptized. All these are clear calls to action. If we're not baptizing new believers or training them to do what Jesus taught, we're not fulfilling his mission. Even though our mission statement sounded cool to me at least, there really was no way to measure our effectiveness. To reach people of our region can mean almost anything. To train people to be effective in life and ministry is great. How does that happen? How can we determine what the mission is taking, if the mission is taking place? Years later, I brought together a ragtag group of titled and untitled leaders to take a look at our mission and made suggestions. In our particular case, this led to some radical changes, not the least of which was an entire name change for our church. I'm not suggesting you do the same, by the way. To be frank, changing a church name is something you should spend a lot of time in prayer and counsel to implement, because you absolutely will lose people when they get offended. But that's another story. We believe God wanted us to take these radical steps, and over a year and a half implemented changes. One key element was to reduce our mission to 3 words: connect, grow, and serve. We did not steal this mission from anyone, and I have no doubt that other churches might have similar or even exactly the same missions. That's fine. For our purpose, we wanted to bring forth a mission that would hold us accountable while telling people why we exist. Our mission is to connect people with God, grow together in faith, and serve our community. The mission statement is the determining factor in deciding what activities or programs we will implement or reject. That mission is communicated online, at services, and through all means possible. If I bet $20 that people in my church could not recite the mission, I'd go bankrupt. Easy to remember, but more importantly, a yardstick to measure what we're doing. Are we connecting people with God? If not, why not? Are church members growing together? If not, why not? Are we serving the community? Where's the proof? A mission should challenge you and your church every day and hold you accountable. Are you implementing your purpose? If not, what are the obstacles and how can they get removed? When we met as a leadership team, every discussion eventually led to whether a plan or action fit our mission. You might have a great burden from God to reach the homeless. Fantastic. You may decide to open a soup kitchen, food pantry, or clothing bank of some sort. Great. How is that fulfilling your mission as a church, which ultimately leads to the Great Commission? If all you do is fill bellies with food, that's nice, but has no eternal value. If you have a process in place for leading people from the food pantry to involving them in small groups or church services, all the better. Once they come to your church, what is your process to train them to become committed disciples? The clearer you and your church understand your mission, the more likely you are to make an impact. When your church vision is clear, you can focus on what is bringing you closer to the fulfillment of that vision and what is not. For example, like many churches, we ran a vacation Bible school program in the summer for a couple of years. Anyone who does VBS realizes it requires enormous time, volunteers, planning, and funds to make it successful. The VBS brought in lots of kids, but when we analyzed it against our mission, we found it wanting in our case. Virtually all of the guests were kids of parents who went to other churches. Seldom, if ever, did we attract children of non-church people. So after 2 years, we stopped. Why? Our mission is to help people connect with God, not proselytize believers from other churches. I'm not against VBS. Another church in our region has a very successful program that fulfills its mission. Great for them. My job as a leader is to invest our time and resources into what moves the mission forward. If, after a reasonable amount of time, we discover an activity that is not helping people connect with God, grow together in faith, or genuinely serve our community, we dump it. Sometimes that ruffles feathers, but my function as a leader is to marshal our efforts to fulfill what God called us to do, not make people fat, dumb, and happy. Speaking of mission, what is your personal mission? Do you even have one? Most of us don't think about it. Obviously, your mission is uniquely tied to your church, but do you have a mission for your family or a personal mission in life? This podcast, my 3 books, and outreach to build wells in Zimbabwe is all part of my personal mission in life. Zimbabwe is also part of our church's mission, but it's also a passion of mine. My point in all this is clarity. If you do not establish what you're aiming at, then your efforts corporately as a church and personally as a leader will be frustrated. Before I close, let me sum up what we've been talking about and offer some practical guidance. Your mission is more than just a clever religious statement to put on your business cards or stationery. It should define what your church is in the business of doing. Any activity that your church engages in should be easily connected to your vision. If the outreach or activity is not clearly fulfilling your mission, it may be time to make some changes. Define for yourself why God put you on this planet. What are your gifts and talents? What is something God anoints repeatedly? Are you using those gifts to fulfill the Great Commission in some way? I write books because God touches and changes lives through my writing. I podcast for the same reason. How do I know this? People often volunteer that something I've said or written has helped them. It's not about my ego, but figuring out what has God's anointing for me and then activating it towards the mission. What if your church has an unclear mission like ours did? Get leaders together at your home or restaurant and ask them whether the church's mission should be altered, changed, or reworked to better reflect your purpose. Don't be quick to create the mission statement yourself. That's a huge mistake. The more input leaders have, the more they will also own the mission. Personally, I contributed very little to what has become our mission statement other than approving it. The great thing is that everyone knows it, and if they don't, we talk about our vision from the pulpit all the time. Today, I'm experimenting, as you can see, with video. I'm going to post this podcast on YouTube at ministerstoolbox.com, so now you can watch my ugly face if you are so inclined, or continue listening on iTunes or Google Play. This week, I'm heading to Zimbabwe and will be posting updates as occasion permits. If you want to follow my mission there, I have a separate Instagram page. Just go to Zim_Wells and follow me there. You can see the well we've built and progress we're making to creating a working farm for people in that area. I'm speaking at a conference there, and we'll see if there is a way to broadcast, though the internet tends to be sketchy. I'll also be posting some live video on our Minister's Toolbox Facebook page. Like the page and get the updates. My new book, Minister's Toolbox, is out in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. The book is a compilation of the best of the first 100 podcasts I've done along with several other editions. Not only does it make a great gift to any pastor, but it's a great reference guide when you need some fresh inspiration or encouragement. If you download the Kindle version or read a chapter or two of it or the book, leave me a review on Amazon, send me a screenshot of your review and the receipt, and I'll send you a free audiobook version, which typically costs about $15. As you know, I always end with a quote, especially for you, and this one is from Zig Ziglar, famous inspirational speaker and author. He said, "Outstanding people have one thing in common, an absolute sense of mission." True enough. Until next week.
For more resources, go to ministerstoolbox.com. Thanks for listening.